Yours made more sense.
I don't think he'll hear it,
I
though.
didn't change it. I just...
Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Burlington City Council. Today is April 17th, 2018, tax day if you haven't filed them yet. But I'd like to take a moment to ask everyone to please silence all electronic devices. For tonight's invocation, we call on Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Hikes.
Let us pray. Lest we begin our list of asks without first thanking, we are so grateful for this emerging spring. Winter has been long this year, and seeing the budding trees and hearing the birds chatter is a reminder of the many blessings of being alive in this day and in this time. We love the abundance of spring. Yet we have been challenged in our city these last 2 weeks. It has been especially hard on our police and fire departments with homicides and with fires, not to mention the weather. We ask your blessing on everyone involved in these tragic incidents. We are grateful we were spared a tornado, but we pray for those nearby who were not spared, that they may recover quickly. Some ancient writers tell us not to be anxious for tomorrow, and we are taking that as a cue to let today's problems be enough to occupy us. For that reason, we ask for guidance and wisdom as we go about the city's business. Help this council and all of our employees to look afresh at what is common as we do our work, and help us find our own renewal in that. Bless our efforts to help our citizens help themselves. Bless our staff with patience and kindness, and bless all of our families for their unfailing support. Amen.
Amen. We have a number of recognitions this evening. We're going to start with proclamation for the Burlington Women's Club. At this time, I'd like to call forward Sandra Arnett. Would you like to share a little about the organization?
We are really honored to have been invited to come to that meeting and to be recognized in such a very thoughtful way. We want to thank the citizens of Alamance County and Burlington for your support that you've given to us through the years. Our members are dedicated to community improvement, and through our volunteer efforts. Ours is a labor of love because nobody gets paid. We're all volunteers. The merchandise that we sell is all donated, and everything that we make, all our profits go back into the community in one way or the other. Our accomplishments that maybe you'll tell us about those. We'll show you how smart, how creative, and how giving our members are. And I'd like to recognize, we have a group.
Yeah, if you'd like to recognize some of your folks, and they're welcome to join us up here.
If you'd like to stand up and this is part of our group. We so appreciate what you do, what you're giving to us.
Well, on behalf of the council, it's my honor to present this recognition proclaiming Burlington Women's Club's 80 years of service. Whereas Burlington Women's Club, otherwise known as BWC, was organized July 13, 1938 as Burlington Junior Women's Club, formed by 4 local women wanting to become involved in the betterment of Alamance County. In 1949, the name was changed to the Burlington Women's Club. And in 1956, BWC organized and sponsored a new Burlington Junior Women's Club, which is still going strong. And whereas the BWC belongs to the General Federation of Women's Clubs in North Carolina, a nonprofit international organization. And whereas the BWC's only fundraiser is the operation of its thrift shop, which was opened in February 1970 and is operated in various locations in downtown Burlington, offering the public clean, affordable clothing and small household appliances at reasonable prices. And whereas the monies earned have been donated to the Burlington Women's Club Endowment Scholarship Fund at Alamance Community Council. donation of $15,000 towards the construction of the Children's Museum, $15,000 to the Burlington Recreation and Parks Department for the construction of an open-air shelter at Springwood Park, providing 36 kids with backpacks every weekend, hundreds of dresses, shorts, and soft toys donated to Operation Smile, and much more. And whereas in the past year, BWC completed 103 projects, volunteered 9,815 hours in the community, donated $19,755 towards community improvements, and an additional $18,271 of in-kind donations, all while operating the thrift shop 5 days a week, year-round. Now, therefore, may it be resolved that the Burlington City Council hereby recognizes and congratulates the Burlington Women's Club on its 80 years of service in the community. Thank you. I look forward to another one for 80 years. We have another recognition this evening from folks at Cone Health. Mrs. Colville.
I'm Mary Hayward. I work at Alamance Regional and the Elon Alamance Health Partner. We have Arlinda Ellison from the Health Partner here as well. But over the past several years, Alamance Regional, the Alamance Network for Inclusive Healthcare, Link Transit, and the City of Burlington have been working together to increase transportation services for our community. Transportation plays a key role in the health and well-being of a community because it provides access to doctors, grocery stores, pharmacies, and parks, which all contribute to our health. The Alamance Network for Inclusive Healthcare is a coalition of local health agencies that provide medical services to patients who may have no insurance or inadequate insurance to get the care that they need. We work to improve the health of our neighbors here in Alamance County by promoting access to high-quality health care services, which often begin with having a ride to the services. The services on Graham Hopedale Road, such as the Health Department, Piedmont Health Services, Open Door Clinic, and DSS, are widely utilized in our community and are frequently accessed through Link Transit on the Purple Route. Because of these services and in support of this collaboration and the Alamance Network for Inclusive Healthcare's commitment to our patients' well-being, Preston Hammock, President of Alamance Regional, has authorized this donation to the City of Burlington to fund a bus shelter at the stop outside of the Health and Human Services building. We hope this shelter will make accessing healthcare and other needs a little more comfortable and easier for our patients, and will reinforce our belief that a strong transit system helps our neighbors to live healthier lives.
At this time, we recognize our city clerk, Renee Ward.
Members of council, it's my responsibility to remind you of your duty to avoid conflicts of interest. I ask if there are any potential conflicts concerning tonight's agenda items.
None.
Before council are minutes from the March 19th, 2018 special work session and the April 3rd, 2018 work session. Do I hear a motion and second to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes have been approved. Before council is the agenda. Do I hear a motion and second regarding the agenda?
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda as written.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Agenda has been adopted. Next, we have two public hearings this evening. Item 1, a public hearing has been set to consider adopting a resolution to permanently close an irregular shaped portion of the city's right-of-way adjoining the Isley Place cul-de-sac. This time we recognize City Engineer Todd Lambert.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The public hearing tonight is for the closure of the right-of-way, and I was going to give a brief history of how we got here and what we're actually asking to be closed. So the original Isley Place was constructed in 1968, the plat of which shows the cul-de-sac in its original location. And this is an overlay of the original location cul-de-sac with an aerial photography to give you some reference to where it originally was in 1968. In 1990, the property north of Iceland Place proposed a condominium development. An agreement could not be reached to extend the cul-de-sac, so the property was acquired through eminent domain and condemnation for the small pie pieces on either side of the cul-de-sac. So the resulting plat in 1991 shows kind of this oddball shaped figure 8 right-of-way to where the cul-de-sac was extended. Excuse me. This overlay shows the new right-of-way in relationship to the old right-of-way and what exists out there today currently. So currently we have this snowman figure 8 right-of-way over a cul-de-sac that doesn't exist anymore. The portion in blue here is the part that was the part of the condemnation for the small pie piece. What the requestant is asking to be abandoned is the irregular shape from the original cul-de-sac. The detailed survey is where the legal description of the reclosure that we have, and it shows the new right-of-way and the old right-of-way, which is being requested to be abandoned. So upon review from the City Engineering Department, we find no need for the irregular portion of right-of-way of Isley Place. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 168-299, we're going through this process that we have advertised in the paper. We have sent out certified letters to the directly adjoining property owners, and we are now holding a public hearing for input on this. Following the public hearing, if council finds that closing the irregular shaped portion of right-of-way is not contrary to public interest and that no individual owning property in the vicinity of the right-of-way would hereby be deprived of reasonable means of egress or ingress, then we request you adopt the resolution to close that right-of-way. The applicant's representative, Mr. Sam Unsworth, is here if you have any questions of the applicant, or if you have any additional questions of me, then I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay. Any questions from council? Sam, would you like to add anything before we start the public hearing?
No, I think
Okay.
covered everything very nicely.
All right. This is a public hearing. If anyone on this side of the room would like to speak. If anyone on this side of the room would like to speak. Do I hear a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion from council regarding this item?
I'd make a motion that we adopt the resolution to permanently close the irregular shaped portion on Isley Place as described.
Second.
Any questions regarding the motion or the resolution? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Resolution has been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Council, thank you very much. Thank you.
Todd, that was sort of like geometry there for a while, wasn't it?
Well, like, it was a little complicated fitting all those puzzle pieces together.
Brought back memories there.
Went down the tubes with a slick.
Nobody had to get out a protractor. That's good. Yeah. Item 2 on our public hearings. A public hearing has been set to consider an application to rezone from I-1A Planned Industrial Residential District to CI Conditional Industrial District for the use of an inert debris recycling and landfill, and all uses allowed in the I-1A Planned Industrial Residential District. The properties are located on the south side of West Old Glencoe Road, referenced as Alamance County Tax Map 1250, lots 43 and 56. So this time we recognize Director of Planning and Community Development, Amy Nelson.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. This rezoning request comes to you with the recommendation of staff, and the Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending the request to you unanimously. The request is to allow the continuance of the current use of the property, and it is what's called an LCID, which is a land clearing and inert debris site. They have to be approved through the state This would allow also for a future expansion of the area if necessary. The comprehensive plan does list this area as being a rural residential / agriculture area. However, the use is in keeping with what's already in the area because there are several industrial uses around this property. It also has a nice tree buffer from adjoining properties. Some background on this facility. A permit through the North Carolina Division of Waste Management Solid Waste Section Permitting Branch is required in order for it to operate. The permit will ensure the site, construction, and operation of solid waste management facilities meets all applicable federal and state regulatory requirements. And Mr. Carl Buckland is here to speak to this request.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to give you a little history on the property, what we've done. Back in the year of 2000, Burlington was hit with some straight line winds, causing devastation throughout the city. The city of Burlington contracted with a company out of Florida to do the cleanup, and FEMA was called in. FEMA declared Alamance County a disaster area in 2000 with the straight line winds. And I contracted with the company in 2000 out of Florida to take the debris on this property and dispose of it. After that, we disposed, after the storm cleanup was cleaned up, it was just shut down. And again in 2003, we had an ice storm. We opened up, took care of the storm debris in 2003. And closed it down until 2014. In 2014, we had the ice storm, and I opened it up, and we started grinding and burying what the stumps and material that could not be ground. And in 2014, we found a market to process the chips and sell it for boiler fuel. So since 2014, we've been operating on a regular basis. Our main customer is the city of Burlington. And sometimes my only customer. But it's, you know, we have some pictures here of we could go to those of what we're doing. Right there, there's a large tub grinder that we grind the debris in that can be ground up, and the pile that's being loaded in the semi-trucks going out for boiler fuel. We like to dispose of it as much in this manner as we can and bury it in as little as possible. But what occurred last year, well, in 2000, let me back up to 2000, you know, we were in a disaster mode. And we called Diener. We got our approval from Diener. We worked with the Public Works Director at that time was Gary Hicks at that time. Of course, Harold was Recreation Director at that time. You were around. Yeah. And I mean, nothing was said about the zoning at that time because we were in a disaster mode. We closed it down, but now that we're operating on a full-time basis, I went back to Diener and asked for an expansion on our original permit of the 2-acre site, and they said that I would need a letter from the city saying that we were in compliance with the zoning. Well, I went to Joey Lee and found out we weren't in compliance for all these years so, under our present zoning, but we have now with Diener, I have 3 different permits. I have a permit for an LCID 2-acre site, and I have a permit to do composting on a 2-acre site. And then I have a permit for 5 acres for a temporary disaster debris staging site. Had the tornado that hit Greensboro hit Burlington, then this temporary disaster debris staging site is the only site that I know of contingent to, well, I'm not in the city limits, but the city limits adjoins my property. I am the closest property that is authorized by DENR to take any temporary disaster debris. Now, if we take the temporary disaster debris in that 5 acres, it's got to be cleaned up and disposed of within 6 months. So we are closely monitored by DENR, which Department of Environmental and Natural Resources. They regulate us, and all we needed was to get an additional permit from them was to get that we're not in violating the zoning ordinance. So that's what we need, is that we're not in violation. So, but we had been in violation for all these years. But we have done a service. We've saved the city money in transportation. For years, they trucked the yard waste down to Saxby Hall, about 15 miles. Now they can take it 3 miles from City Hall. It's a good site. You can see we keep it neat and clean. I don't know of anything that I've been cited twice by DENR for 2 violations, 2 minor violations, which we've corrected in the 18 years. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Any questions from council? All right. Well, we appreciate the extensive history on that. Right. This is a public hearing. If anyone on this side of the room would like to speak? If anyone on this side of the room would like to speak? Do I hear a motion from council to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion from council regarding this rezoning request?
Mayor, I'd like to move we approve the request based upon the consistency with the comprehensive plan. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, and that the amendment is compatible with the existing land uses in the area. Is it inconsistent with it? I'm sorry. Well, what I'm getting to is I like a motion to approve it. And that's the one, okay. All right, I'll read the right one this time. Okay. I move we approve this request as amendment to the comprehensive plan. Although inconsistent with the plan, this request represents a needed change in the area, thus making this request reasonable and in the public interest. Did I do right? All right, thank you very much.
Do I hear a second to that? Second. All right, any questions regarding the motion as stated? All those in favor of the motion to approve rezoning, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you very much for your time. We have a special report this evening from our city manager. There's a discussion to gauge interest in pursuing local legislation that would allow the city of Burlington municipal occupancy tax of 3% in the city limits. This time we recognize Hardin Watkins.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've had a chance to talk with you all some about this in advance, but I'll try to do a recap and then see what kind of questions, and I've got a few nuggets of information to share that may be new. We began, this hasn't been on the city's work plan necessarily for the past year or two, but we began to explore this recently after learning that Mebane was exploring this local legislation. And so we began to do some research to see what may be involved if we wanted to follow along with our friends in Mebane. North Carolina General Statutes permits cities and counties to levy a combined 6% room occupancy tax. Alamance County currently levies a 3% room occupancy tax, which allows the city to request a maximum levy of 3%. If the city was interested in doing that, there are a handful of steps that we would go through. Just as a reminder to council, revenues generated from room occupancy taxes are used by municipalities to bolster tourism and promote economic and industrial growth. 3 things that we certainly all are in agreement we want to see happen here in the city. To be permitted to levy a room occupancy tax, a municipality must request local legislation, which would then give us authorization by the North Carolina General Assembly. If council is interested in pursuing a local bill this year, staff's prepared to work with our local delegation to ask for a bill permitting the city to levy a room occupancy tax. The idea would be to introduce that in this year's short session, which begins on May 16th. So our window of time in speaking with our legislators is obviously we need to get something to them in early May for that May 16th window. Final approval to enact a room occupancy tax at that point, if it did go through short session, would come back to the city, and the city would need to approve that at a future date. So you would have the authorization, but it doesn't immediately enact the tax. That would still take a city council action at some future date, as we had studied that further. So, and I'm happy to provide more details. I don't want to drag out a conversation unnecessarily if you're not interested, but I do have a few more details on some of the specifics. There is some finesse to some of the things you can and cannot do with the funding. Be happy to talk about that if council's interested. However, obviously this is a fairly new item. Like I said, it hasn't been on our work plan for the last year or anything like that. So, and council's generally interested in getting public comment and feedback. If you were interested in continuing the conversation, we could certainly put this on an agenda formally and have a conversation at the April 30 work session and have some sort of public comment or public hearing if council is interested in that, or or the May 1st council meeting, which are the next two opportunities we'll be together as a group. And again, I do have some other details. Don't want to get too far into that if no one's interested, but be happy to answer questions or talk further if needed.
Are there any questions from council?
I have a question. Hard to do, looking at the statute here, when would we have the public hearing? In other words, is it subject to a public hearing? I guess what I'm driving at, I mean, I'm interested in having a public hearing. I'd like to hear some other folks about it. I mean, I've read what's been given to me, but and I was wondering if the remainder of the council would like to have a public hearing. I mean, I think we all have some notion about it, but it may be good to give the people in the community an opportunity for them to be heard. So do we go ahead and hold a public hearing, or do we, I guess we got a sort of short window. Of course, these short sessions that the General Assembly has turn out to be not so short, but the sooner you get your foot in the door if you want to do something, that's, but anyway, my thought was at the end of the day, I'd like to have if we pursue it, I'd like to have a public hearing. That's my feeling. So.
And we think that would be a great idea as well. I mean, we kind of anticipated that. That's why I just had a sort of an add-on as a city manager's report this evening to introduce the subject, to see if council was interested in even taking it to that level of calling for a public hearing. We're not required to have a public hearing. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Huffman can correct me if I misstate this, but I don't think we're required to have a public hearing before we ask our legislators to move forward. Mr. Huffman can weigh in on that if he'd like. It's certainly a great idea, as you have said, to do that. I think that's been the trend and the expectation of this council, to try to get as much public involvement and input as you can on important decisions like this. And there is absolutely no need to rush either. If there is, someone is interested in just looking at this for the 2019, the long session, if you will. I mean, there's certainly time to do that and do a little more homework on our end. Again, we just felt we had learned that Mebane was exploring it and thought it might be a good time if they had already done some of the legwork to kind of join along. So, but there's no urgency. As you all know, this hasn't been on our work plan. Certainly can be. I think there's a number of ideas out there of how we might use this money to bolster tourism and bolster the economy and bolster economic growth in the community. There's lots of ideas about how you might do that. Good ideas, and plenty of them to go around. So I don't know if I answer your question.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I mean,
based on the information that we were provided, there's 18 businesses that would be affected. Is that right, Hardin?
Originally, we thought there were 18 hotels. I think after we confirmed that with our inspections department, we believe there are 15 hotels in the city limits. We've also learned that 72% of the occupation tax that's collected in Alamance County today is generated within the city limits of Burlington.
So that would be the 72% of the 876,000.
Yes, sir.
This is a little bit more complicated than I think we realize. A couple of us in this room, one has gray hair, one doesn't have any hair. Has worked on this for a long time. There's something called a TDA, Tourist Development Authority, that basically the money goes to. And there's different models, I believe, around the state, how that money then is taken, and there are normal processes to go through to be awarded. The TDA is in place now here. Mark Cryan, I think, is the president of the TDAs here. And I think it's only fair for, if he'd be willing to speak. So I'm afraid we're going to rush into something here that might not be the way to get the proper way of doing this. I don't know if you're interested in speaking, Mark.
Yeah, I'll be happy to speak.
Mayor, members of council, city staff, members of the public, nice to see y'all. I don't have anything prepared here. I just I became aware that you guys were going to have some discussion about this, and we were, myself and some other representatives at TDA were over in Mebane the other night when they had their discussion about this. And what we wanted to express on behalf of the TDA already does a lot to promote tourism in our county and bring events in. And I know I've had some conversations over the recent times with Tony Laws, the recreation director. Rec department has always worked very close with TDA and got a lot of support to bring in events. I'm currently the chair of the TDA, volunteer, board position. And it's our feeling, we've had a little bit of discussion as a board about this, and it's our feeling that we're concerned with tourism efforts becoming fragmented. So you start having a Burlington TDA and a Mebane TDA and a Graham TDA. And right now we're doing countywide efforts. And a lot of the things that come, say, to Burlington that TDA supports in turn generate hotel rooms in Graham and Mebane and restaurant meals in Elon and all over the county. And so we just wanted to get on the record with a statement that our feeling is this is a function best done as a countywide effort. And I think Harold mentioned, it gets a little more complicated, and you think you start doing your own, and then Graham does theirs, and again, it may all be triggered by what Mebane does, but we just wanted to express that to you guys and lady, sorry. Shouldn't use a generic term there, but express it to everybody here that our feeling is we have something that's pretty effective. If we feel like our group was not in the process of advocating for increasing the occupancy tax, but if we're going to do it, our feeling is we should do it countywide and continue to work together as a community rather than getting fragmented and starting to have potentially competing efforts and overlapping efforts and confusion for the hotel properties. At the very least, we feel like we should slow the process down and all get together and talk about this issue so we can have transparency and good policy made out of some discussion and input from all parties. So that's what I want to get there, Harold. If you or anybody else has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions just from the TDA standpoint. I don't want to take up your guys' whole meeting time tonight.
Can you briefly just describe some of the activities and things the TDA does in the community?
Sure. There's support from some events. Now, I come to the TDA kind of like Harold and Tony Laws from a lot of the sport involvement. When I first came to town, I was involved with a lot of the sport efforts that group supports. The ones I've been involved with personally, we used to bring the USA South Conference all to town, 8 Division III schools, and all those folks would come compete in their spring championships here in Burlington, generate a ton of hotel and restaurant business. That group financially supports and helps facilitate things like the big national softball tournament that is one of Tony's loves every year. There's a whole host of other things. They also do outbound marketing. They have a website that markets all the tourism destinations countywide. They do advertising in Southern Living Magazine, other magazines that would reach potential travelers to our area. So there's quite a bit going on. It's actually, I will tell you, we've had some staffing changes and a fair amount of board turnover in the last couple of years. We do have a new strategic plan we're getting to roll out and a new brand and a number of things. So one of the things we want to do is also get a chance to communicate better with groups like all of you who have some stake in this too, and better express to you what's already happening. Because one of the things we realized when we went and talked to the folks in Mebane, they had no idea of any benefit they were getting out of anything TDA was doing, and they're certainly reaping some of those benefits. But I don't think our group had in the past been doing a very good job conveying that. So we want a chance to do that too. So our hope is that everybody can get together around the same table. We can talk about what everybody's goals are, and do this either together, raise the occupancy tax together, don't raise the occupancy tax together, but continue to work together as one community because we're all tied together.
Two things come to mind. One is I would like a
formal presentation, maybe at a work session of what TDA does.
Yep.
For the county, for the city. I mean, obviously, I look at it through a little selfish lens. If there's $876,000 being generated and 72% or whatever comes from the city of Burlington, I want to kind of know what that's doing.
Yep.
And then maybe it's worth a discussion if we was to move forward with this, it would still be funneled through the TDA, but specifically for city of Burlington purposes, so there's not overlap or cross communication or, you know, just territory competing.
Right.
You know, that there's lots of things. It is a complicated, as Harold agreed to, but if we have the opportunity to do this and expand what we already have available to us, that may help us with some initiatives that we're already working on that we're going to have to seek funding for. Then it only makes sense that we explore it to the nth degree.
Yeah, and I heartily agree that that may be one of the options that may be worth looking at. I do know one of the things we were planning to do is move towards more of a large grant program too, where when we get some money accumulated, we want to give the municipalities or other, maybe the attractions in the community a chance to come and say, hey, we have this great thing we can do, but we need X amount of money. And so we're looking to put more money into product development through grants and things like that. That may be something where some of the municipalities may benefit in a significant way, potentially, but maybe keeping it within the same framework, not having duplication, and so that may be one of the ideas. So what I'd love to see happen is that maybe sometime in the next couple of weeks we had maybe a working group meeting where we had representatives from each of the municipalities, maybe county government, some hoteliers. We have some of those folks on our board, but people that have a dog in this fight get together and talk about what we can do and try to talk about doing it together.
The hotel owners in the past, it's been a mixed response from them, obviously. The second part, I think, that concerns me somewhat is it's a pretty tight schedule to get this to a short session. Talking to the people in Raleigh, I believe we will need unanimous support to get this done down there. There might be some advantages to look into the long session after people hopefully can get together and come to grips. But let me ask you a question, Mark, now. With the TDA, though, now, back to Jim's point, if the majority of the motels are in Burlington and Mebane, there's some in Graham, obviously, and Elon's there. And Elon brings in a ton of tourism money. The university is substantial in this.
Yeah, it's the single biggest driver of
the biggest one.
Hotel rooms and restaurant meals in the community.
Yeah. It needs to realize that. But I know in Wake County there's I believe there's a group that actually makes the decision based on these grants on an annual basis. These grants are submitted, but of course they have the PNC arena there, which generates a ton of money, which is a little different game. But what happens if can just certain jurisdictions vote to increase the tax and not everybody in the county?
My understanding, and again, maybe David could tell me if this is correct, but my understanding is, for instance, if Mebane goes ahead and tries to and implements 3% occupancy tax, that's Mebane specific. Essentially, then what you're going to have, there's no more. If you tried to raise it in the remainder of the county, there'd be some inequity there, and so I would expect that the dominoes would fall, and every other municipality would create their own hotel motel tax. And again, probably with some fragmentation, and as you point out, maybe a municipality like Elon that generates a lot of tourism dollars not having any control or access to that money, because then it's all, or at least half of it's locked up within municipalities. But how it would work beyond that, the technicalities of it, I'm not fully versed in. This is a pretty new topic. I mean, it really only got on our radar a couple weeks ago, and we said, well, we as a group, we're not sitting at our board meeting saying, hey, let's raise the occupancy tax. I mean, this is not a tremendously friendly community to additional taxes. Most of you, I think, know. Nobody's looking to add tax burdens to people. But it came out of the blue when we said, well, you know, if this is going to happen in some parts of our county, maybe it should happen in all of it. So the mechanics of it, I believe, David, and I don't know how much you know about this, but I think if Mebane raises theirs, we're essentially locked out of doing anything more countywide. Is that true?
If they adopt the full 3 cents, yes, that's right. So it's a maximum of 6.
Right.
You got one county where it's Mecklenburg County where they have an additional 2% that's designated particularly for the NASCAR museum funding. But between the county and the city, in this particular case, it'd be a maximum of 6. Of course, Burlington could then fall in line and get their 3% on top of it.
So
as could Elon.
As could Elon, yeah. Obviously, they're a pretty small amount of money, and certainly Burlington, would generate the lion's share of the revenues, and then have control of the lion's share of the budget. I can understand from where you all sit that would be very attractive, but again, I would point out the fact that I think we're going to be more efficient and more effective if we're working together, because this really is a county issue. People don't come and say, I'm coming to an event in Burlington, so I'm not going to go to a restaurant in Graham, or my softball tournament's playing our games in Graham, so I'm not going to go to Burlington to eat. I mean, this community is so interconnected that we just feel like it would create unnecessary complications and potentially duplication, certainly fragmentation. So I do think, though, if Mebane moved forward, then I think my assumption is the dominoes would fall. We appealed to Mebane at their last council meeting. I appreciate the time here. We just had a couple minutes in their public comment period, and we just said the same thing. We'd really like to slow this process down, get everybody involved. Let's talk about what we're going to do and try to have a big picture game plan instead of just rushing into something individually.
David, what's the county role here now? I mean, because I know the money goes now, if I'm not mistaken, the county gets a certain portion of it.
But the county, for the purpose of collecting it, gets 3% off the top of the first $500,000, and then an additional 1% for everything up and above that for what they collect. In addition to that, they get of the proceeds, net proceeds, they get 1/3 of it. And Ms. Roberts Evans of the county, she was able to fax to me late this afternoon. And it's interesting, of the $251,230 for fiscal year 16-17, which represents the county commissioner's portion they received from this tax, Alamance County Historic Museum received $84,000. The Sword of Peace received $12,500. The Alamance County Arts Council received $80,000, and Alamance County Parks $25,123. Unallocated, it shows a 20% retainage of $49,607. So of all the 1/3 that the county uses for, I noticed it's for things outside of the corporate limits of Burlington.
And from Burlington's standpoint, and Elon for that matter too, I reckon you could say, is that an awful lot of that business has been generated by those two, by the university and quite frankly Parks and Recreation here. So my point back to you, David, is this: if the city would try to pursue this matter and the legislature would approve it at some point in time, the second 3% then would come to the city. Is that correct?
The additional 3% would come to the city. That's correct, with the exception of the 3% off the top if the county was collecting the money still. Yeah. So 97% of it, 97% of that 3% would come to the city. We in turn would have to have a mechanism by where
we would set up.
Yes, we would set up. The governing board is not allowed to turn around and serve as its own TDA.
Right.
Okay, so you'd have to set up your own TDA, or the idea was thrown in to have that TDA appropriated, but for Burlington purposes, that might be something that could work also.
And And so of the new, that new revenue, Mr. I want to pick up on your comment, so 1/3 of that can be retained by the city for projects like Alamance County has administered, the Historic Museum, Sword of Peace, the Arts Council, Alamance County Parks, and then 2/3 would go to bolstering tourism.
Precisely, and in fact, I ran those numbers based upon Ms. Roberts' numbers that she faxed me earlier today. It would be 97% of the amount coming to Burlington or from Burlington would be $613,238.16, and 33% of that, which would come to the city and not to the TDA, would be $204,208.31 a year.
What was that again?
$204,208.31.
That's today's dollars based on what we have, the 15
That's tax.
institutions that we have now. As that grows,
Yes,
there's
correct.
funding mechanisms that would grow with it.
Correct.
Now, in the past, Tony, when we presented things that the motel and hotel owners get involved now, really now, what we're doing is impacting their rates.
It's impacting the tax that's on top of it.
Yeah, it's not impacting their rates. I would debate that. It's going to impact their rates. It's not going to impact.
Well, they're going to debate that other issue, but I understand, because I used to debate the issue, how many people in our community pays that, and that didn't seem to fly. But I think that's why I believe, though, it would just make sense to try to sit down with people and get everybody to understand, you know, what we're trying to do, and potentially the benefit of these funds, because these funds can benefit the motels just as much. That was always my argument. They would win out of this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Because you're putting money into different facilities that then draws, what do they call, Tony, heads on the bids, and that's their whole term. So it makes perfect sense to do this. It's just, I think my only concern is how the mechanism, and I think we need to do it very much in the open. I just don't know if by May 15th, all this can be done or not before a short session. Yeah.
Well, it's not necessary that it be done.
Right.
I'd rather do it right and do it thorough and look at all the unintended consequences of the cause and effects pieces as to trying to rush it.
Yeah, I would too. And actually, I did speak to Representative Ross, and he had much the same opinion. You know, to go to the long session possibly, because it gives them more time to. It could be a long session, but it gives them more time to get things through. Now, he's saying that they're telling those guys now, mark this word down, 30 to 45 days in a short session, you know. We'll see. But if that's going to be the case, it's going to be nothing but rush stuff through. But it's a great idea.
And of course, the big wild card is what does Mebane decide to do, and do they get a sponsor for their legislation? Do they move ahead? Now, keep in mind, even if they get enabling legislation in the short session, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will immediately implement the tax. Although it does sound like they're pretty eager to move ahead. They didn't have a lot of discussion about it in their meeting. They seemed set on moving ahead, just from what I saw. I can't read a mind, but. So obviously, if they do that, that's going to change the landscape a little bit. But certainly, from the standpoint of doing something either countywide or if you guys do something individually, again, we're still trying to make a public statement, and we're appealing to Mebane to slow down and let's all have some deliberation. Let's all talk. Again, I think all the municipalities are influenced because. Tourism it's really a countywide phenomenon. It's all linked together. So again, the TDA, we're inviting everybody to get together to come to the table and talk about this thing. Excuse me. So hopefully we can get good policy with some transparent discussion, everybody heard from, and not something that we rush through. So that's our call to them, and that's also again the same message I'd like to give to you guys. And again, I very much understand where this council, this group sits. You need to think about the city of Burlington, and I know some additional revenue is very tempting, but I think we're stronger together. And so that's That's our message.
So we could actually get approval from the legislature and not act on it.
Absolutely.
And that may be a prudent course of action to go ahead and at least get the opportunity before us if we wanted to do that. And then we can make our decision based on future input, meetings.
Yeah, there's been, Mark suggested the idea to do a working group meeting with hoteliers, community with the TDA, with the city and the municipalities. And then, as manager mentioned, we have a work session coming up. We have them every month. So there's an opportunity there for council to learn more about the different models and different uses and different applications of.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to take up Jim's idea too. I think it was Jim, you said maybe come lay out a little bit more how TDA works and what's currently happening. I will just so you guys know too, the tax is collected by the county, and we are connected to the county for administrative purposes, but it's an independent group. We have a board. It's designated by the legislature that enabled the tax. The composition of the board, there has to be some at large, there has to be some hoteliers, there have to be people in the tourism or retail segment of the business. So there's a group there that represents different segments of the industry. And so we operate independently, and again, so we're not a county agency. We're an independent group that operates within the confines of the county to promote tourism, and again, hopefully help municipalities develop their inventory. Again, the City of Burlington has, and I know Tony can second this, City of Burlington's gotten some grants from TDA to improve facilities in the past. Certainly there's been financial support for events. So it's certainly there's an existing strong relationship. But I'm happy to Jim to take up that invitation to come. And you tell us when works for you, a work session or maybe a meeting. We can have maybe myself and Grace Vandervisser, who's the executive director, come give you guys a little more information about what's currently happening. We're kind of in the process getting ready to roll out this new strategic plan and some new branding and all, so it'd probably be a good opportunity to maybe do multiple things at one time.
Let me just be clear, Mr. Cryan, you're not speaking against raising the tax to 6%. You just want it to be
We're sort of ambivalent. It hadn't really been on our radar, but our feeling is if the alternative is the county started, or the municipality starting to do things piecemeal, we feel we'd be better off doing it as a county. And the one thing doing it as a county, as a unified community would do, it would go ahead and get us to the cap. I believe we're the lowest in the area. I think everybody around us is charging up to the 6%. So if we went ahead and as a community just moved our hotel motel tax up to the 6%, it would eliminate the potential for fragmentation down the road. The biggest thing we feel is that we want to work together. If everybody says, let's hit the brakes, let's all work together at a 3% occupancy tax, that's fine by us. But if we say, well, we are always going to face this possibility, maybe we should just go ahead, and particularly if the hoteliers see the benefit and if all parts of the community say this is good, then we should move forward. I certainly don't want to be known as the father of the occupancy tax increase. That's not why I'm chair of that board. I'm chair of that board because when they ask for a volunteer, everybody else stepped backwards, as those of you who've chaired committees know. So we just want to do what's right for the community. We just want to do it transparently, and we want to do it as a community. So we're not necessarily advocating, but we're saying it may eliminate future problems, and it may give us all some more resources. Certainly, I know if we go to 6%, I have no doubt that the City of Burlington is going to get some significant benefit from that. There's going to be a chance to take some of those additional monies and give them as grants to improve recreation facilities, event facilities, maybe help host events that draw people to town. So, so everybody certainly could win, except certainly there could be some community reaction against it. So we're not standing here pounding the table saying we need to raise the occupancy tax. We're saying if we do it, let's do it together, and let's do it after some deliberation and some transparency.
So based on our discussions so far, it sounds like there's interest to learn more about the process, the tool, the TDA, and the April 30th work session could be a good opportunity for that. Would council like to see a presentation on those items?
Yeah, and I'd like to have the history of this be included part of that.
Okay.
So.
And then as Jim mentioned, there's the opportunity for staff to begin to work with our legislative delegation to kind of understand more about what needs to be brought forward and what the timing could be on the occupancy tax. Is there interest from council or any objection to staff working with our legislative delegation in the meantime? regarding that?
I think that's a must. You must remember now that this impacts a fairly strong lobby in Raleigh also in terms of your motels.
I'd like to see, to get some data on what our neighboring counties have.
Yes, sir.
I have a hunch it's,
I just paid 6% in Goldsboro and had to look for it. It's part of the deal if you're going to get a hotel room.
yeah.
And I think all around us, they're paying that.
It's a good opportunity.
Any other questions, comments? Any other requests for the April 30th work session items? I think primarily a presentation on what the TDA does, what some of the benefits that the city has seen over the past couple of years from that relationship, what are some of the models about how to apply those funds if we collect them, and what are some of the options related to that.
Yeah, I'd like to see how the funds were distributed over the last fiscal year. Just get some idea of where it is going.
I'd be happy to do that. And we can do that. Actually, I'm sure David could also get that from Susan anytime he wanted to, because that's all, the county actually writes the checks for us, you know, again, it is administrative support. So it's readily available, but we'll also be happy to bring it to the work session on the 30th if you guys would like us to come speak to you then.
Yes, and if I could ask a question, did y'all budget that at the beginning of the year? Do you know where your funds are going?
Well, there's an operating budget, certainly, but then there is some money allocated to do things like grants and support events, because you don't always know what's going to come along. It could be somebody with a great event comes along and says, hey, we need some support. It could be, you know, again, it could be the city of Burlington or some other municipality. That group has supported Graham in the past with some equipment, some temporary fencing to help them host different types of softball tournaments. So you don't really know what's coming down the pike. But we do have an operating budget that we set up, and then there's some money that's available for grants. And again, we are in the process of setting up a process to take proposals for larger grants. We've done mostly kind of small stuff, but we're hoping to actually do some things with a little bit larger impact. So, so we budget to a point, but a lot of the money is available depending on what comes to us.
Well, are the grants in a separate? I've got your Munis financials here, and I note that for the Carousel Festival, we were budgeted $1,000. And is there another line item I should be looking for as far as, is that all the money that was?
It may be. It may have been all that was requested. It may have been, now something like the Carousel Festival, unless it's inventory development, typically the money has to be spent by something that promotes tourism to out-of-town visitors. So that may have been one of the only things, maybe the city was only doing a little bit of advertising that was reaching out beyond the community that would have generated overnight stays. But there's certainly other things in there. There is an opportunity though to start doing some larger grants. But what you see there, I couldn't give it to you line by line, but I do know that we have some money available.
Keep in mind, y'all fund the CVB. All the money from the CVB comes through the TDA, and also there's a sport Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Sports Development Council is another offshoot of the CVB and the TDA, which they fund that too. So many dollars a year that goes to events like the National Softball Tournament. We get money out of that, and the Carolinas Conference tournament we're getting ready to do in a couple of weeks, that we get money from that. So you know, those are two big things that the TDA funds.
And aside from those big events too, the Convention and Visitors Bureau exists so that when people want to visit, there is a single place to call. And they have the Visit Alamance website. You can look at that. We're in the process of rolling out a redesigned website that'll work better on mobile, capturing more data and doing more internet marketing. But it also is it's a one-stop shop too. And for sporting events, somebody can call that office and say, hey, we want to bring our tournament or our event to your town. They help bring Cycle NC through. Most years there's a stop in Alamance County, and they're the place to call for that, so that they have one place that can help them get place to camp and transportation to restaurants and hotel rates for the people that want it. So they serve as a clearinghouse. Again, one of the reasons why this stuff is better done as a community, because the needs of a particular group, they may call the number that's on the Visit Alamance website, and they may need a hotel in Burlington, but they may want to visit a campground. You know, they may want to go to Cedar Rock. They may want to do restaurants in Mebane. So this way, the CVB, the Convention and Visitor Bureau, is in a position to market and promote the whole county, which is really what makes sense for everybody.
Any other questions? We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks so much. I apologize. I didn't mean to quadruple the. You guys were flying along through that agenda, so I'm sorry.
We just wanted to save more time for you. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and again, look forward to the chance to present you all some more information. And if any of you have any other questions or anything you want, give me a holler or give Grace a call over at the CVB office over at the depot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we look forward to an ongoing discussion about this again. April 30th, we'll sign our work session agenda. Right. Any other questions or comments regarding the manager's report tonight? All right. We do have one public comment. At this time, I call forward Pamela Burney. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I first appeared here on March 6th in reference to elder abuse care. My parents happen to be victims of actually being abused by tenants in the neighborhood that have become quite a nuisance. Since then, I have met with Chief Smythe. My dad and I did, and I must say that I'm very appreciative to the support of the detectives that have been working with me and encouraging my parents that they don't have to live in fear. My father's 80 years old, and my mother is 79. Miss Corbett's father is 88. And then Miss Patterson's mother and father are probably close to 89 or 90. Unfortunately, the tenants that reside at 1816 Cadet Street have become quite a nuisance. Not only have they become a nuisance, they have been seen throwing human feces and urine in an empty lot next to the house. I have reported it to the city of Burlington, and I was told that the person that owns the property would have to be the ones to call and report that. However, the person that owns the property does not reside in North Carolina, so there's no way that they would know of what's going on a vacant lot. They do have someone to care for the property during the summertime. As it is getting warm, the mosquitoes are starting to come. The flies are developing. The parasites are developing. The bacteria and the smell is very foul. My parents cannot sit outside and enjoy simply because of the odor. We have also met with the mayor, which I certainly appreciate, and we have an appointment that we are going to walk our community on April 30th. Numerous police calls have been made to this residence, 1816 Cadet Street. Over 8 calls have come. More than 8 APS, Adult Protective Services, complaints have been made against the gentleman that lives in the home. His name is Kinston Hodnick. His mother is Angela Thompson. And he has a mental health issue. But unfortunately, the state of North Carolina does not designate where an individual has to be treated. They have a choice. We were very concerned when I came on March 9th because it had been said that they had purchased a shotgun. We had no proof at that time. When I started talking to other neighbors, the proof came because some of them had also seen her with the shotgun and taunting it outside. Of course, she has a First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, and it's on her property. But what it does is it intimidates those other individuals that are in the community because they taunt it. I've talked to the police. The police has come up, but it is not against the law for them to have the gun in their home. He can have a mental illness. It's not against the law for him to be around that gun. They take it out every day and put it in the trunk of their car, and then they take it out when they get back home. For safety reasons, my parents, we have had to install an alarm system and cameras so that they will feel safe in their own home simply because of what these tenants are doing. When we found out who the owners were, Jackie Marie Hurst and Elon, I was asked the question, where does the responsibility lie? Is it the landlord who's responsible for the tenants who have become a nuisance? And what are the violations and the citations for that? However, at first we thought she was moving out because of the situation of the home. The home has been declared substandard. Can't understand why you're throwing dirty water out in the front yard and on the side, or you have disposed of human waste. The house was actually inspected. The first time Hunter Glenn went to the home was Easter Monday, and they would not allow him in the home. So he made an appointment to go back on April 9th. He went in, and even though the house can be determined deplorable and deteriorating by some, it is still substandard. There's a big problem in Burlington with landlords buying property in poor areas. It saddens me to think that the community that I grew up in is now considered a poor area. Many of the occupants that lived in the homes that are being rented are no longer with us. And so the pride that was there is no longer there. But my parents still take care of their property, and they are very happy to be there. But it's very sad to live in fear. However, the landlord has told the tenant she does not have to go anywhere. She can stay there as long as she likes. And he is not obligated to repair anything in the house by any means. However, he was told if she moves out, he will have to put the property up to code. Therefore, why would she move out if she is comfortable living below her means? Why would he want her out of the community if he did not want to prepare the house and make it more decent? Therefore, there is a profit, and he is increasing it. He's gaining from it. The occupants that are being harassed by these people are hurtful. Therefore, the city of Burlington says the police department should take care of it because it's a nuisance. The police department says it's a housing issue. It's a nuisance, so the landlord should take care of it. DSS says we can't do anything because he doesn't fall up under abuse, exploitation, or disabled. Family Justice Center that I've went to, and I have talked to individuals there, again, it doesn't fall up under disabled, exploitation, or neglect. So where does emotional abuse fall? Where does it stop, and where does it end? If you don't have anything in the ordinance to cover it, there are no laws to cover it, then my parents and, well, our parents are going to continue to live in this horrific situation. They have a gun. We are fearful. We don't know if they're pointing it out to us or not. They're very vigilant, and they're very arrogant, and they have no respect for anyone in the community, and they have targeted the elderly. It's only the ones that live around her. We have been told to put up trespassing signs, so everyone has, so that they are not allowed on their property. They are very vulgar. They will come out and they are intimidating, they're harassing, they're malicious, and it's all in their own doing. No one is saying anything to them, and they seem to get a lot of pleasure out of bringing fear. What I have done is went to different individuals in the community and just asked, why haven't you called the police? Why haven't you called and reported it? Because unfortunately, this family has lived in this property for 4 years. I found out that my parents were being harassed this year, and it was because on February 6th, my father's tires were cut. On February 9th, Miss Corbett's brother's tires were cut, who lives across the street. On February 15th at 11 p.m., my mother calls me hysterical because someone had came in the back of the house and intentionally broken the bedroom window while they were there. We called the police. The first set came was almost as if it was no alarming concern that it had happened. When I made the call to Chief Smythe, which I totally respect, because I had taken the Citizens Academy, and at first I too had a negativity about the police. I too felt like, why are you going to call them? They're not going to do anything anyway. But by going to this, it gave me a better understanding of what the law really is and how the law works. And it doesn't work according to the way you personally feel it should, because we all have protocol to go by. But it certainly gave me a better intellect and outlook on just how much power we really don't have. The police is doing everything that they can. But where else does it lie? The city is saying it's substandard, and you can't tell people what substandard is and how they can and cannot live because she's choosing to live below her means. It's not the landlord's fault that she's chosen because he's allowing her to do it and she's chosen to do it. But where does the responsibility lie with him? He has told her that she can stay. I'm sure she will. But we are not done with this because it is not fair to the families that are still there, and it is not fair for her to feel comfortable doing this to individuals that have never done anything to her. The names that she has called and the vulgarness and the things that she has done outside and gyrating on the porch and the things that she said to my father and even her son who has a mental health illness, you cannot keep hiding behind that. If you choose not to go for treatment, then you're saying it's okay. But to say you're going to come over and you're going to intimidate him, you're going to beat him, saying sexual things to my mother and thinking it's okay and then laughing is totally unacceptable. So I'm here to try to seek help. I don't know where else to go, but I know it's not over. But I wanted to update the council on everything that I have done and everyone I have talked to. And still, we are almost still at one. DSS cannot do anything, and I've talked to Susan Osborne. And we have received reports, and the report says that the family has done everything that they needed to do within their report, but it was referred to the district attorney. When we called to see why is it referred to the district attorney and what needs to be done, that's confidential information. So we have not heard from the district attorney. And as some have said, it is election year. We may not. I know Nadolski very well because I'm a school social worker. And I've been involved with the courts, with truancy, and I've always found him to be very supportive, especially when it comes to children in their education and families being responsible. I am appalled at how things have happened. I am very upset, but I have to keep going because my parents are depending on me now. I cannot let them down. I do not want them to live in fear, and nor do I want to keep allowing this family to be able to create the environment they have done. It has become more of a taunting. It's more of a lovable experience for them. I can only think what the summer is going to be like when we start smelling what's in the lot across the street. Because when I asked the city of Burlington to do this, they told me that maybe they could do it, but maybe they couldn't because the person has to call. So now we're in the process of trying to find out who owns it so that we can get them to make a complaint that the city of Burlington can go up and investigate it. We called Alamance Health Department because of environmental health. I thought they would be able to go there. But Alamance Health Department does not service the city of Burlington. They only do the county. They told me to call the city of Burlington. I called the city of Burlington. They don't have a person for solid waste disposal. So everyone I seem to talk to has sent me to someone else who does not know where I need to go. So I'm here now, and I'm open for suggestions. My heart is very heavy, but I do appreciate the support that we have been able to get from the individuals that I know can only do but so much. So I don't know how much responsibility or how much more pressure may be able to be put on the landlord. I'm not saying it's all his fault, but he is responsible for that tenant that is in that home on that property. I thank you for listening. I thank you for your time. And I'm open to any suggestions and would appreciate any support that I would be able to get to ensure that the remaining lives of my parents, that they do not have to live in fear, and they deserve to be able to enjoy their home and their property and their community because they have served it well. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Arden, would it be feasible for us to get a report of what we've, just a brief summation on the efforts that we've taken here, and then any options that we have?
Yes, sir.
To pursue it? Obviously, we don't know all the details, and you've done your legwork, and that's very eloquent, and it sounds like you've covered all the bases, but this is a classic where the system fails someone.
Can you, excuse me, Jim, do you have names of people you've spoken with in the city
Yes, I talked to.
It's okay. If you could let Mr. Watkins know that.
And I do want to say that Detective Donnie, and I say his name wrong, so he tells me to always call him Detective Donnie Ahmed. Is that right? And then Sergeant Shane Brown have been very supportive. They have tried to encourage me. They have called my parents to let them know that they are there. Everything has to be probable cause. You have to have proof. We know who did the windows, but we don't have the proof that we can say they did it. We have suspicious, probable, reasonable suspicion. Again, it's within the law. So we're looking at civil lawsuit as far as the landlord, where somebody has to be accountable for the person that's living in the house.
But if you could talk to Mr. Watkins with the names of departments.
Okay.
Most resourceful person I think has ever come before this council. I mean, I want to put you to work having to do something else besides this, so maybe we can find a way to help solve it. That'd be quite remarkable. The protection of your parents is quite admirable and inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for pointing this out to us. I don't know what we can do, but we can try.
I just want to reiterate, any solutions, any recommendations from city staff, anything that may require legal research or whatnot. I mean, I'd like to see this, if you know, or reasonably should know there's an issue, and certainly if you're up here in an elected capacity, you need to try to figure it out.
Sure.
I've heard horror stories where various agencies turn the other cheek and then something malicious or vicious happen, and I don't want that on my hands.
I think at some point in time, the city and county needs to work together on this. No one knows who works for who, and certainly I believe I'm sure the county manager would have some of the same interest, Hardin.
Yes, sir. We'll get to work on it.
All right. Thank you very much. That moves us to council comments. Does anyone have any comments this evening? Just wanted to mention a couple upcoming events. Spring cleaning is continuing, so our bulk waste fee is still waived for 10 more days to April 27th. So folks looking to get out and clear out your garages and attics, you've still got some time. As I mentioned last time, North Carolina's DMV is working on the Real ID program. They're encouraging folks to get your Real ID certification. More information is available online, ncrealid.gov, or by calling 919-715-7000. Their goal is to register 4 million North Carolinians by the end of this year with the Real ID program. We've got a couple great events coming up in the city over the next couple of weeks. Get your calendars out. Record Store Day is happening downtown this Saturday, April 21st. As some of you may not know, downtown Burlington does have a record store, and they are putting on a number of events this weekend on Saturday, including music, food, prizes, and of course vinyl records. North Park Farmers Market is kicked off Thursdays from 3 to 6 p.m. over at North Park. Tuesdays, sorry. Misspoke, thank you. Tuesdays from 3 to 6 p.m. at North Park. And then April 28th is a busy Saturday here in the community. We have 3 great events to attend, and that's the Allied Churches of Alamance County is holding their Ride Home Bicycle fundraiser. That starts at 8 a.m. And then it's Tai Chi and Qi Gong Day at the Village of Brookwood. You're welcome to join me as we participate in Tai Chi at 9:15 a.m. And then it's our annual Maker Fair at Holly Hill Mall at 10 a.m. So busy Saturday, lots of great events to keep you going. And then Active City Streets is coming up on May 5th at 10 a.m. in downtown Burlington. That's always a wonderful event. It's well attended in our community. Any other council comments? All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Did she say that her?
That's open to the whole community.
I heard someone she said.
Maybe they can hang out with me, please.